Welcome to Crisis in Perception. This is where we examine the systems that shape our world. And today, we're looking at Herman Melville's Moby-Dick, but probably not in the way you're used to. We're not just looking at it as a novel, but as a blueprint for a powerful, totally self-contained industrial system.
So, for a moment, let's just forget all the romance of the high seas. Instead, let's see the whaling ship Pequod for what it really was: a complex, floating factory designed for one single, relentless purpose: to convert the life in the ocean into cold, hard profit.
Here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll look at the ship as a machine, then we'll get into the logic of the voyage itself. We'll see how pressure builds inside this vessel, pinpoint the moment of crisis, and finally, trace its echo right into our world today.
Okay, first things first, let's establish exactly what this system is. You have to imagine the Pequod as a complete, isolated industrial society operating for years at a time, way out there, far from any laws or anyone looking over their shoulder.
Melville himself described this world perfectly. The Pequod wasn't just a ship. It was a factory and a nation all in one, carrying everything it could possibly need for years. It was basically a hermetically sealed world with its own rules.
So now let's get into the logic of this voyage and see how the system itself created this powerful set of incentives that basically govern every single person on board.
The entire financial engine of this ship runs on a system called lays. Now, instead of a salary, every crew member, from Captain Ahab all the way down to the newest sailor, was paid in shares of the final profit. You can think of it like a 19th century version of stock options.
And this is absolutely the key. This system meant that every single person on that ship was financially invested in the success of the hunt. Their personal gain was directly, and I mean inextricably, tied to the ship's gain.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because this system creates a massive imbalance. The risk, both financial and, the physical danger of hunting whales, is shared by everyone. But all the authority, all the decision-making power is concentrated in just one person, the captain.
So this imbalance of shared risk and singular power creates this incredibly tense environment. And we can understand it really well through a powerful metaphor.
I want you to think of the ship as a sealed container. As it sails further and further from land, away from the rules of society, the internal pressure, social, psychological, you name it, it just builds and builds with absolutely no release valve.
So let's trace how that pressure just ratchets up. As the ship gets more isolated, external laws just vanish. Then the crew's own financial goals get completely fused with the captain's goals. This allows Ahab's personal mission to become the ship's inescapable destiny. And what happens to dissent? Well, any practical objections, like the ones from Starbuck, are just trapped. They have nowhere to go and zero power to stop the voyage.
And this is it. This is the point where the entire system is pushed to its absolute breaking point. That intense pressure we just talked about, well, it reveals a critical and ultimately catastrophic flaw in its design.
Right here, the system fractures into two competing logics. On one side, you have Starbuck, who represents the rational, commercial purpose of the whole trip, profit. But on the other, you have Ahab, who has completely hijacked that purpose for his own all-consuming metaphysical quest for revenge.
So this forces us to ask the big question. Was Captain Ahab a bug in the system, a single madman who broke it? Or was he a feature? Was he the logical endpoint of a system that concentrates so much power in one single place?
So here's the crucial point. The tragedy is really rooted in a crisis in perception. The crew looks at Ahab's madness as a personal failing, but they completely fail to see that the system itself, with its absolute authority and its perfectly aligned financial incentives, created the perfect conditions for one man's obsession to become a collective catastrophe.
Now, this 19th century system, this pressure vessel, it didn't just sink with the Pequod. It evolved. And its basic structure persists in organizations that we see all around us today.
I mean, think about it. The structure of the whaling ship is a direct blueprint for many modern corporations. The absolute authority of the captain, that's the visionary CEO. The lazy system? Well, today we just call them stock options and performance bonuses, which tie everyone's financial fate to the companies. And the white whale? That's the singular, unrelenting pursuit of growth or market dominance.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description.
If you enjoyed this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.